President Biden's poll numbers are underwater again in New York as his popularity reaches an all-time low. A new Siena College poll finding that 52% of New York voters have an unfavorable opinion of the president, while just 45% have a favorable opinion. 52% of Democrat New York voters also say that they want the party to nominate a different candidate for president in 2024. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby graded the president's job performance yesterday. He handles multiple global and domestic crises. Here's what he said.
Well, he's balancing it well. He's doing it. I mean, if you want to give him a report card, A+. I mean, he's commander-in-chief. That never stops, and the duties and responsibilities are literally global.
Hey, he's the commander-in-chief who never stops moving. He's like the Energizer Bunny, Joe.
Energizer Bunny.
Your reaction.
Who has been on vacation 40% of the time during his presidency. That is an actual number. That is an actual stat. You want to give somebody an A+.
A+.
Okay, that's interesting because on the economy, Real Clear Politics average, Joe Biden gets 37% approval. On foreign policy, 38% approval. On inflation, 32% approval. On crime, 36% approval. On Ukraine, that's the high point, 42% approve, 52% disapprove. Overall direction of the country, 24% of people think it's going in the right direction. That doesn't sound like straight A's to me.
Yeah, but John works for Joe. He has to say Joe's doing a great job.
Go with a plausible grade, right? When I changed D's to B's on my report card, I mean, I went with something that my father would believe.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
A+.
It is mind-boggling. Yeah. A+.
Always have the person who's grading you as someone who works for you.
Yes. Yeah, and you determine that guy's success in return. The one thing I will say, and we sort of talked about this earlier, but I think it's important, 36%, 37, whatever it is, Joe, 36, 37% approval rating, that's about as low as you get. Yeah. And when a president gets that low, he, or maybe one day there'll be a she, has to do something to take attention away. If you have problems at home, what do? You go overseas. You start a war. That's traditionally been the formula. And might Israel actually be his opportunity to get people to stop paying attention to his failures at home? And, maybe Joe Biden actually can accomplish something. He hasn't in Ukraine. He hasn't with China. Let's not even go there.
Yeah.
Oh, Israel, here's a way to get involved.
Wow. Well, you know what? Unfortunately, you're talking about domestic issues. They're all in our faces. Reckless spending leading to 40-year high inflation, crime spiking across the country. But when you look at what you're talking about, international foreign policy, the world is on fire, Hannah.
The world is on fire, but ultimately, the people at home care about what happens here. And I'm so tired of people acting like we can just keep spending and spending and spending and it's not going to impact us. Yeah. You had Janet Yellen saying last week, we can absolutely afford more wars. What's one more war? At home, people are hurting. I feel like I'm in an abusive relationship with this administration, the way that they gaslight me and the rest of us and keep telling us that they're doing a great job on the economy and everything's going great. It's not. They're bleeding people dry. People are hurting. TikTok, where I spend a lot of my time, is filled with people talking about how they're having to get basic amenities to make ends meet right now. Yeah. The jobs reports are not as rosy as they're trying to make it look like. We're losing full-time jobs. They're being replaced by part-time jobs. They're counting people twice in the unemployment numbers. It's not looking good out there.
Well, it's interesting because it's not just the ineptitude on policy, but it's also the misinformation.
Exactly.
Telling us it's raining when it's sunny out. President Biden is set to formally answer questions for the first time since the war in Israel began, when he appears alongside the Australian Prime Minister at the White House Rose Garden event this afternoon. Meanwhile, Politico is out with a new article titled "Battleground Dem Senators Consider Bucking Biden on Border, Iran." The authors write this. In interviews, a trio of Democrat senators from GOP states, all of whom are up for re-election next year, criticized Biden's handling of the border and indicated that they're considering signing on to Republican-pushed legislation to freeze the $6 billion in Iranian assets. Are you kidding me? You're considering freezing the $6 billion? Now you're going to tell me you're considering it? I mean, how ridiculous.
Wow. I mean,
shut it down already. More money to Iran as they're creating death and destruction in Israel.
It's mind-boggling to think that they would be willing to do this. But what really blows my mind is that that $6 billion, which has been sitting in South Korean banks, was released on 9/11.
On 9/11.
Can you imagine?
Can you imagine is right.
Releasing the money on 9/11?
And then they say, we have a quiet agreement with the Qataris to freeze the money. No, you don't. People want to see something permanent, knowing that the Iranians cannot keep generating all of these billions in revenue, which they're using on their nuclear stockpile, on their proxies for terrorism. Joe.
I'm going to go full John Kirby here. I'm going to admonish everybody on this panel.
A+.
A+. No. That money is supposed to be used for humanitarian purposes. It's never going to be given to Hezbollah and Hamas for weapons. This is ridiculous. As far as that press conference in the Rose Garden today with the Australian Prime Minister, that will consist of 2 questions, because that's how it works in a joint press conference. So it'll go to 2 reporters handpicked by the president. We're not going to hear anything new today. And overall, the border, that is what this election is going to come down to in 2024. And you hear many Democrats, as we saw in that political piece now, you have to shut that border down and adopt fully Trump policies, remain in Mexico, and true border wall construction, or else Democrats are going to either not show up on Election Day or actually go to the Republican side. That, I can tell you anecdotally, is already happening.
And don't spew out the misinformation that you're going to send money to the border and that's going to do anything. The border does not require money. It requires, like you said, a policy change. Do you see how many people are coming across the southern border into America? The gotaways, 1.5 million so far. Those are only the gotaways we know about.
Well, listen, immigration has been a hot potato for over a decade now, and I'm fed up with it. I'm 35. I have been watching them go back and forth with this. Nobody seems to have concrete solutions. Nobody seems to want to actually get down to business, and they're going to have to. We're hitting a point where you cannot possibly police this many people. We need to actually fix the system so that people who want to come here and do the right thing legally can do that easily and start working and paying taxes and supporting America. And that way we can actually focus on the people who are trying to do us harm with those resources at the border.
Hey, let's be clear. Border apprehensions were at a 20-year low under President Trump.
Correct.
Under President Biden, we are at a 40-year high.
Well, walls work.
These are the numbers.
Walls work. You go into the subway, you got to go through a turnstile. It's a wall, right? When you go to sleep at night, you close your front door and you lock it. That's a wall.
Yeah, good point.